Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the Japanese Grand Prix race review. Now, elephant in the room, before I go any further, I just want to say massive apologies for the lack of content over the weekend. As some of you know, I've been having some issues with my PC and sorting them out took a lot longer than expected. But I'm pleased to report that most of those problems are now sorted, and so the channel should now be back to some kind of normality. And also, a very quick heads up that this video will be a switch back to the old race review format, just for this week, whilst to try and nail the basics with my new editing software and the setup. But anyway, enough about all of that, let's get into it and start by having a look at the full race result. It was Lewis Hamilton who took victory in Japan ahead of Valtteri Bottas in what was a fairly comfortable afternoon for Mercedes. Max Verstappen ended in third place, we will be talking about him a little bit later in the video. Daniel Ricciardo recovered well to finish fourth in the second Red Bull. Some good pace in that car this weekend. If I'm being totally honest, I didn't expect that from Red Bull. But it was miserable all day for Ferrari. Kimi Raikkonen only managed fifth place, and Sebastian Vettel, who of course we will be talking about a little bit later, in sixth. So whereas Red Bull surprised me with their amount of pace this weekend, I was really surprised by the lack of pace shown by Ferrari, not just in the race, but throughout the event as a whole. Sergio Perez won the midfield battle in seventh place ahead of Romain Grosjean. The second Force India of Esteban Ocon finished the race in ninth place in what was a very solid result for the team. And Carlos Sainz in Renault nabbed the last point for 10th. Despite surprising many and getting both cars into Q3, neither Gasly nor Hartley were able to score points for Toro Rosso. Gasly in 11th and Hartley in 13th. They sandwiched a Sauber of Marcus Ericsson in 12th. But it was yet another miserable weekend pretty much across the board for McLaren and Williams, with Alonso and Van Dorn 14th and 15th, and Sirotkin 16th with Lance Stroll in 17th place. How times have changed. As for your retirements list for Japan, Charles Leclerc, he retired from the Grand Prix after reporting on team radio that something broke on the car. He was involved in quite a few scraps through the day and a cracking move on Nico Hülkenberg into that final chicane as well. The German also retiring from the Grand Prix, he had some problems at the rear of his car. And Kevin Magnussen, he retired his Haas after damaged cores following a collision and a puncture. We will talk about that a little bit later on. So as I said there, it was Lewis Hamilton who took the win on Sunday in comfortable fashion, I think it's fair to say, and moved one step closer to his fifth world title, a title he can confirm next time out at the US Grand Prix. And frankly, it just looked like a bit of a cruise from both the Mercedes boys all day, despite a late push from Max Verstappen. But Valtteri Bottas admitted that they had more to give in the race, so I'm pretty sure it's safe to say, and to assume that that would have been the same for Lewis Hamilton. So both Silver Arrows drivers were in control of what was not just a dominant race, but a dominant weekend. And speaking about it all in the post-race press conference, Lewis Hamilton said, "I loved it. I was actually very, very happy. I think the whole weekend's been very strong from the team. It's a great 1-2 from Mercedes. It's a true showing of the great strength in depth we have as a team. This track is the best track in the world. I don't know why they don't make tracks like this anymore, but every second of the run it was just great fun. I was able to look after my tyres the way I wanted and I just managed the pace. It's really weird. Obviously I have been racing a long time, but the happiness I have inside is as high as always. It's a great feeling." As I said a moment ago, Lewis Hamilton can seal the title in Austin and needs to outscore Sebastian Vettel by 8 points to get the job officially done. So it was a great day all round for Mercedes then, but that was certainly not the case down at Ferrari. Throughout the weekend, the Scuderia struggled to get anywhere near the pace of the Silver Arrows, and their qualifying tyre blunder left Sebastian Vettel down in 9th on the grid. And the race didn't really get much better for the German either. He had a great first few laps when he made his way up to 4th place in no time really. However, on lap 8 and following a safety car period, Vettel did try a move up the inside of Max Verstappen through Spoon Corner, and the two collided, leaving the Ferrari in a spin and dropping him right back down the field. The incident was investigated by the stewards, but they decided to take no further action, and I agree with that decision. It was a risky move, and it's probably not the easiest place to pull off an overtake. Verstappen leaves him just enough room, so there's no blame whatsoever here from me. But in that situation, the gap is always going to disappear. And I remember tweeting during the race that I felt it was too much of a gamble to take at that stage of the race from Vettel. But in hindsight and thinking about it a bit more, he was trying to turn around a 50-point championship deficit, so he's got to take risks. Yeah, okay, he could have waited for the DRS zone or waited for an easier overtake, but there's no guarantee that gap's going to open up again. So in the heat of the moment, under the pressure and clinging on to his title hopes, I can kind of understand why he went for it. And during the race, Vettel said over team radio, "Okay, not much to say. I think enough has been said. I don't know. If I don't go for that gap and the gap was there, then I might as well stay at home. Sorry for the result." All in all then, a very frustrating day for Sebastian Vettel. To be fair, a frustrating few weekends for him. And although, a lot of people are pointing the finger and saying, oh, he's cracked again, it's yet another mistake. As I've already said, I can understand why he's taking that risk. 50 points behind Lewis Hamilton. There's no point sitting behind Max Verstappen and waiting for him to come in and make a pit stop and serve that penalty, whilst all the while the Mercedes continue to pull away up front. He had to pass Verstappen, and then he had to pass the two Mercedes as well. So there was no point hanging back. But at the same time, there were probably better areas to take that risk on the circuit. But ultimately now he sits a whopping 67 points behind Lewis Hamilton with just the 4 races to go. And absolutely, I agree, anything can happen in Formula 1. But surely, barring a catastrophic implosion, if you like, from the Brit or Mercedes, I think it is pretty safe to say that the title is done. But that contact between Vettel and Verstappen wasn't the only incident between the Dutchman and a Ferrari. Towards the end of the first lap, Verstappen locked up into that final chicane and cut the corner, but Max still tried to make that corner, and as he rejoined the track, he banged wheels with Kimi Raikkonen, who was on the outside on the exit of the corner. The stewards investigated it all and decided that the Red Bull driver was guilty of failing to rejoin the track safely. Now, I want to clarify this because there are a few people out there that seem to think the penalty was given for hitting Raikkonen, but it was not. As said there, the stewards deemed that he'd left the track and not rejoined in a safe manner, and whether it's liked or not by people, the fact is, he did not rejoin the track safely. Again, with the benefit of hindsight, I guess, he could have lifted out of it and kind of cut that corner completely and then backed off towards the end of the straight so that he hadn't gained an advantage, as they like to say, but he was at fault. Interestingly enough though, Kimi Raikkonen did say after the race, "In an ideal world, I could have left a bit more space. I tried to go outside and leave him as much room as possible. I know that sometimes when you come back over the curbs, it's impossible to turn the car after you bounce over it, and I don't know if that was the case. I don't think he purposely tried to hit anybody." And yes, I agree, there is no claim from me or anybody as far as I can tell that that was a deliberate move by Max to hit Kimi. Of course it wasn't. But it was still his fault. And so the penalty was completely justified in my opinion. And there's a few people saying that Kimi shouldn't have been on the outside. Even Max Verstappen came out and said that he could have backed off and waited. But that's not Kimi's job. Raikkonen is there to race. If he sees an opportunity, he's going to go for it. Max was the one off track, he was the one responsible for rejoining safely, and he didn't. And that's it at the end of the day. But that incident aside, Verstappen had a very stellar race and a very solid weekend overall. But they weren't the only decisions to catch the eye this weekend. First up, and Lance Stroll was deemed to have forced Fernando Alonso off the track at the final chicane, with the Canadian receiving a penalty for his actions. However, after being forced off track, Fernando Alonso had no choice but to miss that chicane. But instead of using the escape road, which is there to allow drivers to rejoin safely, he decided to pretty much floor it and bunny hop across the gravel. That move saw the Spaniard pick up a penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Whilst I was watching that race, I felt like that was ridiculous. How can a driver be penalised for gaining an advantage after being forced off the track? But having watched it all back today, and as I've already said, he could have used that escape road, but chose not to. So it does make sense in that regard. And finally, in terms of penalties or lack of in this case, we move on to Kevin Magnussen and Charles Leclerc. As the two made their way down the pit straight, the Sauber was quickly catching Magnussen, and as he got close, Leclerc decided to move to the right and try and pass. However, the Haas moved right at the last moment to defend, and that led to contact, which of course caused a puncture for Magnussen, and led to Charles Leclerc saying over team radio, quote, "Magnussen is and will always be stupid. That's a fact. A shame." No penalty was given to Magnussen for the incident, and many were angry on social media about the Dane's move. But once the dust had settled, Charlie Whiting explained why a penalty was not given. The race director stated, "If you analyse it very carefully, what you see is two cars coming down with Kevin not moving, and then Charles catches, he decides to go to the right. And at the exact same time, on the video, there's a one frame difference, then Kevin moves. I think it's impossible to say that Kevin blocked him. It was just he made the decision that he was going to go right fractionally after Charles had. You had to look at it quite a few times and analyse it in little detail to see that, but I think that it's just unfortunate, and that's what the stewards felt." But I'm going to move on from all this penalty talk as it seems to be dominating the video, but of course they were the main talking points from the Grand Prix, so I have to cover it. But let me know in the comments section down below your take on the Magnussen and Leclerc incident, or indeed any of the stewards' decisions. I'm sure there'll be some differing opinions. Daniel Ricciardo was voted as driver of the day by the fans, and in all fairness, I have to agree. He started down in 15th after yet more reliability issues in qualifying. The guy just can't catch a break, can he? But managed to recover to finish in 4th. Yes, okay, I know. You would expect him to have made those positions through the midfield given the pace of that car. But that shouldn't mean that anything should be taken away from him. He pushed hard through the Grand Prix, pulled some very good overtakes, and thanks to some good pit work and strategy from the team, he managed to get the jump on Kimi Raikkonen as well. And if you look at the result as a whole, not just the overtakes and the strategy, but where he finished. And despite starting so far back, he ended the race just a few seconds behind teammate Max Verstappen and almost half a minute up the road from the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen. So it was a very impressive drive from the Aussie. As ever though, a couple of honourable mentions. Sergio Perez drove very well and was super racy all day. He picked up some very good and very important points for himself and the team. I'm going to say Carlos Sainz as well. He deserves a little bit of credit for his solid drive and for grabbing that last point for Renault. And of course, Lewis Hamilton absolutely deserves a shout for his dominant performance all weekend. Before I go then, let's have a look at the championship table, starting with the drivers. As I've already mentioned, Lewis Hamilton is now 67 points clear of Sebastian Vettel in the Drivers' Championship, with Valtteri Bottas in third on 207 points for Mercedes. But that's where the battle could well be towards the sharp end of the grid between now and Abu Dhabi. Bottas 207, Kimi Raikkonen in fourth on 196, and Max Verstappen in fifth, not a million miles away on 173. Could be a bit of a tall order to get third, but Red Bull are expected to be strong in Mexico, so if he can pick up a win there, you never know. So keep an eye on that fight. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo is in sixth on 146 points, but it is now Sergio Perez who heads best of the rest in a very tight battle. He has 53 points in seventh, Kevin Magnussen has 53 points in eighth, and Nico Hülkenberg also has 53 points in ninth, and somehow Fernando Alonso is still clinging on in there with 50 points for McLaren. In the Constructors' Championship, 78 points separate Mercedes and Ferrari. It's looking good for the Silver Arrows, but of course with 43 points for a 1-2 finish, a couple of good weekends for Ferrari and they are right back in there. Red Bull remain in a distant third place, but well clear of Renault in fourth, who have 92 points. Haas closed in a little bit this weekend, they're in fifth on 84. McLaren now just 15 points clear of Force India, they're in sixth with Force India in seventh. Toro Rosso remain in eighth place, 3 points clear of Sauber. That could be an interesting fight between now and the end of the season, with Toro Rosso improving so much this weekend. Honda really surprising with their upgrade. And Williams, as they have done pretty much all season, still sit rock bottom with just 7 points on the board. That is it then for the Japanese Grand Prix review, and now that it's all over, what did you think of the race? What are your views on all those penalty decisions? And of course, who was your driver of the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Now, I will 100% be back on Wednesday for the midweek live stream. That will be at 7 PM UK time. And as I said at the start of the video, the channel should be back to some sort of normality as of now. So the next video up on the channel, unless we get any huge news of course, will be on Thursday. There'll be a news roundup Saturday, we'll be live on Sunday. And then of course it's race week again, so we'll be building up and looking forward to the US Grand Prix next week. And that will see a return to the new debrief format for the race review, rather than the old format which I'm doing today. And once again, I will say it again, a huge thank you to all of you for your understanding and indeed your patience as well, whilst I've been sorting these things out this weekend. Don't forget you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.